I loved it. And now when a summer breeze rolls by, I think of World of Warcraft, which is really unfortunate. Kind of weird. I hope it goes away someday. I mean, it's cool, but it's just so weird. There will be many points at which you need to take a step back and separate what emotional labor you are doing and what is simply part of your job. And because those two things are often combined at Eastwind, people find themselves in situations where maybe you're trying to train somebody to do something. And her question to me was, what if they say, I just want to do it my way? My answer is, at that point, they're not letting you train them. There's some personality block, something happening right there. And now you are doing emotional labor. My name is Warren Smelser, and I live at Eastwind Community in Missouri.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. It's the suburbs outside of Philly for all my life until I moved here.
And how were you raised?
My mom had and has really strong familial ideals. She grew up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and kind of raised us with that, an ethic of how important family is, which I totally just ignored or didn't like. My dad was kind of indifferent in that way. I guess one thing that comes to mind immediately is how agnostic they were and how they just did. I was free to explore what I wanted, really. And I was given, I think, lots of things, lots of opportunities. Education-wise, they definitely put a focus there. And then experiences-wise, I was in a choir that traveled the world, which was really formative. And I was just able to do quite a few things with my family.
You went to high school in that suburb?
Mm-hmm. I initially went to a military school in freshman year. That was pretty far north in Pennsylvania, but then sophomore through senior year, I went to a public school in the high school. Dropped out halfway through senior year.
So talk about, the events that led up to you finding out about Eastwind.
Yeah. It basically happened that I met someone named Nicole who became my girlfriend and my best friend when I was around 19. She was a lot older than me. I met her at a day camp I worked at or went to as a child my whole life, really close to my house. Nicole had been to communes, like yoga communes, and retreats, and she was talking about that. The context here is that I'm pretty depressed. I'm kind of wayward. If you know me, I've dropped out of high school recently. I'm intelligent. It's not like I'm like trapped in most senses. I just don't want to go the college route. I don't want to go a lot of, usual routes or the more popular routes. And so given that, she suggested, why don't you try out a yoga commune? And she had shown me yoga recently. I think yoga is really great. But at the time, I was not I was like, I don't know about this yoga commune thing. It sounds weird. But what I did do shortly after that was I remember being at my kitchen table and just looking up commune or something. And I really quickly hit the ic.org, the Intentional Communities Directory. And it's just a list with hyperlinks and summaries of these places. And so and it's alphabetical. I just went in order and looked at damn near all of them. And I just thought that was really interesting. And I didn't really know what I was looking at with all of them. But I thought it was really cool that they're out there and people can visit. A lot of them are mostly like homesteads. A lot of them are like 5 or less people. And I knew at that point, I don't know why, but but I knew I wanted to try that. But I also knew that I didn't want to go to a really low population community. I wanted something where I could socialize. I wanted something where I could learn a lot. And I just figured the older a community and the more populous community would be where I could do those things successfully. And that's pretty much how I found Eastwind.
So Eastwind was the first commune that you decided, okay, I'm going to write a letter to them and see where this goes?
No, not exactly. I wrote a letter to Twin Oaks, who was just a little bigger. And
much closer to you.
Yeah, and much closer. And I should say at the time, too, I did see Eastwind, and I saw Missouri, and I'm from outside of Philly. I've been around the world, but not really that much in my own country. And I was just like, where even is Missouri? What the hell is that even? So it just seemed so distant. And yeah, I wrote to Twin Oaks and got rejected because they had too many male members at the time. And they said, try reaching out to our sister communities. And Eastwind was the next biggest one, I believe is what I thought, or like how I was thinking about it. And so I wrote them, and TiStar emailed me back probably that day or the next day and said, if this is like April now of maybe 2014. And she says, we have an opening. We have a free visitor period in a few days in May. You want to come? And I said, sure. So I got a plane ticket and I went.
And how old were you then?
I was 20.
20, okay. Yeah, what were your reasons and motivations for buying that plane ticket and going out there? Because you didn't know anyone, right?
Yeah, no, I had no connections in Missouri. I had very few connections out of my own little PA bubble. Motivations for going out there. I mean, it was an adventure. I definitely am adventurous. I like new things. I had a teeny bit of reservation about, not knowing people, but that was a big part of why I chose such a big community, like such a populous community, was because I just figured if there was any weirdness or any potential harm, that would be minimized the more people there were. It really was just I was gravitating towards the unknown. I think I didn't have any expectations. I barely looked at Eastwind's website, and like they just show. I know it for sure now that I'm here, but I figured this then, that there's just a few pictures on the website, and how representative of the community is that? Barely, because you just can't represent the whole thing like that.
So you fly into Springfield, and who picks you up, and walk us through that first interaction?
Okay, yeah. So here's where I confronted my first my first hopes, I suppose. I'm sure what I hoped as a 20-year-old boy was that two attractive women would pick me up or something stupid like that. And when I got out of the airport and there was just a minivan waiting for me, there were two people, a middle-aged woman and man, who were just like, one of them like golden brown and just like big and tough looking, and I just like, who are these people? I don't know, descriptions just fail, but obviously I had some expectations, because all of a sudden two random middle-aged people picked me up and they're like, hey, how you doing? Just blew my mind. And actually that day I was really sick, so I wasn't really noticing. I was just trying to not throw up the whole time. I don't know what happened, but the morning I got up to go for my plane ticket, I was really sick, and I vomited on the way to the airport, and I vomited at the airport, and I vomited in the plane, so I was just completely sick. Along the car ride, they asked me some questions. I don't remember any of this. And they picked up a old man and a younger guy who were at the bar in Springfield. And we all went back, and I was like barely awake.
Okay, so you arrive on the land, and is it dark? It's at night, or
It is, yeah. By the time I arrived at Eastwind, it was like 10, 11 o'clock. And this is in May, early May. So it was dark. I was shown, I don't remember that well, but I know we arrived at RB, Rock Bottom, and that's the hub, the central hub of community. I don't even know if I went in there yet. I probably did. And then I was shown by one of my drivers. I was shown to where I would sleep, which was really close to the hub of community. And I was given, I was given a pillow, blankets, and sheets. And it was the next day that I started exploring and looking around and all that. But for that night, I had no idea where I was. Everything was shadow. Everything was darkness beyond 10 feet in front of me.
And there was no one else in the manhut?
Nope. I was actually the only visitor on my visitor period.
Yeah, so you're walking around the next day, and what were your first impressions?
My memory I don't conjure up images that readily. I do know that I thought it was awesome really quickly. I don't know if I could tell you what my memories of the first day were.
It just that, yeah, your initial impressions from the visitor period.
Yeah, I remember pretty quickly noticing how many oddball people there were, and like really just expressive in that they were just being themselves unabashedly. And I found some of them hilarious and some of them really interesting. Like there was just all sorts of people, and they were all, I thought, distinct. And another thing that I noticed was that when people imagine themselves retiring and they imagine all that hard work they're putting in, what it's for, I thought then that, oh, this is what they're working for. Like at the time that I thought that, I remember I was sitting at the rock bottom front porch table and just looking, and there's the garden, and there's people milling about, and I'm in the woods, and there's the sounds of people cooking inside, and I just thought, that's amazing. I'm 20 years old, and you're telling me the deal is I work 5 hours a day, basically speaking, and this is part of my life. So it's very picturesque here, and it occurred to me then that this must be what people are working for, but you can do it sooner than 70, surely. Yeah, and I do remember too walking around and getting really giddy. I would just like start laughing, and it was just like kind of crazy, because I think a big part of it is just because of how picturesque it is, and because you're in the woods and there's gardens, there's just things happening. It's very different than what I'm used to. I'm used to the suburbs.
Is there any standout interaction or memory from those first couple months that comes to mind?
Um, Honestly, the first one that comes to mind is that someone just freaking out on me, saying kind of quietly that he would cut my head off. And I remember that was standout for sure, but I was also just like, why? What's going on? I mean, it was a misunderstanding, and he way overreacted. It was a whirlwind for sure. I also made it a point to meet every single person and try to help them a little bit, and I learned everybody's name in 3 days, which is just, if you have experience of moving somewhere and there's 80 different people's names to learn, like that's just insane. And so I remember being the person bugging other people and asking them to help and seeing everything. But I think for that reason, it was just such a whirlwind that almost nothing stands out to me. It was all really cool.
Who were your first friends?
My first friends were probably, I guess it was like everybody on the ranch crew that I I liked right away, which would have been like Jaime and Kaylee and Dandy and Ish and Luda and Liesel and Roxy, oh Casey. Um, yeah, but actually, I don't think I had any friends, any like close friends for a solid 2 years or something like that. But that was a crew of people that I thought was really cool and I liked hanging out with them a lot. I just never, I didn't do all the things they wanted. I didn't hang out in all the ways they wanted to hang out. And I just, that's always been a thing for me.
When did you move into Sunnyside, or where did you live first?
So when I first moved to Eastwind, I lived in Lilliput. Um, I had a badass room in the upstairs hallway where there was a loft that had a bunch of windows. It was just a very spacious room compared to many of the not exactly spacious rooms of Eastwind. And I lived in Lilliput for, I don't know, maybe like 3 months, maybe more than that. And then I moved to Fan Shen for, I don't know, 3 months or something. I know it was in the summer because I could tell how rough the insulation job was there because I was just like sweating profusely. I could only get to bed by like, I could only fall asleep once it was like midnight in the summer because I was just so hot, even with fans running. So I moved into Sunnyside, must have been like 5 years ago, maybe 2 years into my tenure at Eastwind. And I had been there for, yeah, like 4 years, 4 or 5 years, is my guess, is how long I lived there.
And Sunnyside is the party dormitory. People hang out there quite a bit. There's a lot of drinking and so on. You're not a big drinker, so how did you fit into the social scene?
Yeah, I fit in, I think, slightly differently over the years. When I first came to Eastwind, I was drinking probably every other night, every few nights. Like I didn't think it was an issue because in my own life it has never been an issue. Like I don't drink often if it's not, I don't know, given to me, and now even so, if it's given to me, I'm just not drinking very much. So anyway, I did that a bunch because that's what other people were doing. And then I fell out of that because that's not my way. And I would say the same with Sunnyside, where at first I was uh, smoking a lot of weed and I was drinking pretty regularly. And yeah, that just didn't feel very good for me, especially the weed, because the combination of smoking weed and for me just like having such a flurry of thoughts and all of them seem like so demanding of my attention, and to have that but you're like sitting on a couch and sometimes almost nothing is happening but you're just sitting on the couch and like I it just ugh, it's kind of crazy making. And for me that was a huge issue. And I would even, after a while, maybe after a year or two, I thought I need to stop smoking so much weed. um, I felt dumber for it. Um, and as I was saying that out loud, there were other people that were talking about their different experience of it. I think a lot of people smoke more than they actually want to, but there were also people, plenty of people talking about how they have a different experience of it and they don't feel locked at all. And I should just leave if I wanted to leave. So I would hang out at Sunnyside, and my relationship turned into I became freer there, especially as I lived there longer. I felt free to leave whenever I wanted to, um, and I actually just found myself hanging out less and less, um, while nonetheless living there for many years. There was even a illustrative moment when one of my friends kicked down my door, like broke it, kicked it down to come inside and ask me why I live at Sunnyside if I don't hang out with everybody in the building. What I said then was that I'm just here kind of hoping for a change. Like, I want to be a different energy in that place. I hope for different things for the community at large, but a microcosm of that in Sunnyside because of the amount of drinking, which I think is too much, I should say. So yeah, I believed that then, and that I hoped for something different, and for that reason I would stick around. I mean, there were times at Sunnyside where we'd call it study side, where you walk by and like 2-3 people are reading books in the common space. It's just chill. People are just reading. There were like different things going on too. There's, a world of possibility, and that's the kind of stuff I really loved. I did love that there were many intimate conversations had there. But on the whole, there was a lot of debauchery in that. I didn't fit in with that, and over the years, it just became more and more. Especially, I probably as like my closer friends were leaving, even closer acquaintances were leaving, and it was other people that I hadn't built more solid relationships with. Then I cared even less about hanging out because it wasn't the activity I wanted, and it wasn't a person I knew very well. And that happened until I left like last year.
That person who kicked down your door, were they plastered?
Yes. Yes, they were.
Did they fix your door?
No.
Did you fix the door?
No. Or like barely.
Who had to fix the door?
I don't know if the door is replaced right now. I mean, it closes.
You're talking about consuming too much. Was that a product of simply people always being like, I'm packing a bowl right now and passing it around, or here's a beer, or was it more like, you need to smoke this?
Oh no, it was the availability. I don't remember people really forcing it or anything. But that's something to be said about the culture, at Eastwind, but culture in general. As I smoked less and drank less, as I wanted other kinds of activities that were not commonly happening at Sunnyside, I just fit in less. And I think people, I don't know how to say it. I'm just going to say we were less friendly, but that does not mean that we were like there was more animosity or anything. I just mean we were more distant. And that's just going to happen. So no, it was just the availability that had me, and the way that I was encountering new problems. This is a very new lifestyle. There's a lot new, a lot irregular. So I was dealing with things sometimes by smoking weed. Maybe I was emotionally distraught. Smoking weed can help in the short term, or drinking. So for those reasons.
And usually it's at the end, but we might as well just go here now. It is like when I first came to Eastwind, that's how you socialize, right? Like that's how you can meet people and become friends with people. Do you think that alcohol and substance use is a problem at Eastwind?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. The thoughts that I have developed on this issue are more in line with like recognizing trauma and how that plays out in people, recognizing culture and what that is. In this case, yeah, I can say that for sure. I do not like how much people drink, and really just use. If I could use that as broadly as possible, just like taking in things, like not just being themselves, unadulterated. Yeah, it just seems like too much, and I think what I'm seeing is that those are all usually short-term solutions to trauma, or to a lesser extent, just like woes, dealing with the situation. But they also are just habits that people have. A lot of the, let's say the cannabis use, I think of as just habitual, and really you can tell a story about why it's happening. But the fact that it ever started and it just kept going and other people are doing it just makes it all of a sudden there are signals everywhere to just smoke again. Oh, I'm sitting down on the couch. Maybe I'll smoke. Oh, I see my friend. Maybe I'll smoke. Like, they're everywhere, and all these signals become attuned to like these very few things that people do. Yeah, and I don't like that personally. But I guess my point with bringing up trauma too is that I don't simply see it as like an issue of somebody electing to do a thing, and shame on them for doing that. I what I see or what I try to notice is like, how is that person hurting? What is their life like? What have they been doing? And because a lot of that stuff, a lot of this trauma work and noticing how people are doing, it kind of, we don't make enough time for it. And by we, I guess I just mean human beings in general. I don't know. We just let that go by. And so, yeah, it also seems understandable to me that people, if given full reign to do so, will just drink or smoke and be happy with that and sad with that in whatever proportion they are.
Especially as you live there and you get into a routine and you see other people's routines, it's easy to pick up when someone is a little off or something's a little different. Typically, though, things aren't addressed in a formal manner unless something bad happens or something public happens. How has your experience been in how community deals with with issues that result from drinking or people lashing out, etc.?
Oh no, it's kind of a complicated situation. The situations when they come up. So I would say on the whole, there's a lot of room for improvement. I almost don't want to say bad because, or what I mean is I want to say bad, but it's not quite right to say bad. Because people have the tools that they have at that moment. And I don't think that upfront work, that consistent work is built into this community. For example, we have community meetings on Sundays that are not very well attended. And this is just one of many signals that we don't really commune that much, or we don't get together as a big group, or that we don't have the capability to. Sometimes people want to, like these big issues come up if somebody lashes out, and we definitely want to get together, but we're not very good at it. That's for sure.
Maybe just talk about what you've observed and how things are dealt with, and then maybe go into a little bit about what you've learned from seeing all that and being a part of facilitating some of those things.
I can start by saying that generally speaking, Eastwind community has a regular meeting on Sundays at 2 p.m. And this is for whatever. It's planned ahead of time. People bring issues or plans and ideas, and we just talk about something regular. At that meeting, we have a facilitator who does what we call keeping a stack, which is they have as people raise their hands to speak, they keep a list in order of those people so that they may speak in that order. Historically, that facilitator basically just does that. Maybe steps in if there's some guidance needed. Now I should say that lately we have broken that job up a little bit to where the facilitator actually engages a little more and guides a little more, and we have a stack keeper. But for the most part, I'll just speak in terms of what Eastwind has mostly done most of the time I've lived here, while knowing that it functions a little differently right now. So at emergency meetings, something will happen. There was an event where somebody was really drunk, and punched somebody in the stomach, tried to strangle somebody, and punched somebody else, and tackled somebody. Just mayhem, all in one night. And we called a meeting. By calling a meeting, I mean that a few key people were informed and made this decision to get a meeting going. within a couple days. And we did it, maybe the first one was at night because we had multiple meetings on this person. And those meetings are generally very emotional. They're emotionally draining. I think that everybody brings their shit to the meeting more than they bring tools or skills that they have. And that has been true. It's true now, and it was true the whole time I lived here, but I think I've become more understanding of that. It's become more important to me to have those kinds of tools. One thing I noticed about the meetings that we have is that we're not very cohesive. Eastern community is, when it comes to it with really big issues, not cohesive. And this is totally understandable because the turnover is so high that you usually, at any one moment in time, have a group of people who maybe a third of them have lived together for 5 or more years. And the rest are newer than that. And maybe a third of them have lived together for a year or something like that. So yeah, you don't really have much of a basis for cohesion. And Eastwind in general is not, there are ideals, I think, but they are not so, they're not that strong. Like Eastwind as a whole is not a strong ideological entity. At least I don't think so. So yeah, you have a lack of cohesion there. That comes out a lot, and that is part of what exhausts people in meetings, is that people cannot seem to get on the same page, and decisions are made by simple majority oftentimes, which those are not very strong in the long run. If you have 53% of the group making a decision and the rest of the 47% just feels shafted by it or wants more conversation, but there's no more need because the decision has been made, it doesn't make for very strong results. I guess speaking to what I've learned about our meetings, what I've realized is that there's a serious problem with the synchronous, the fact that we all get together to speak on a thing. There's a problem with that only because a lot of people don't have information and don't seek it out beforehand. So we end up coming to meetings, many of us not even sometimes knowing what it's about. Like some people come to meetings not knowing what the meeting is about, and then they speak on it. And so what comes out of their face is their opinion that is developed over the last 3 seconds. It's just very reactive. So we have meetings where people are very reactive, only because there was no research ahead of time. There was no pre-meetings. There wasn't much structure to lend itself to a well organized meeting or a decision reached over time. Generally, through meetings, a decision needs to be reached at the end of the meeting, and I think of that as very problematic. I think that if I didn't live in an internet world, I would go the way of having more meetings with the people I live with, doing check-ins. The fact that I live in an internet world, or even a written world, means that forums are excellent tools by which to hone arguments and come to decisions before you actually sit down to talk about the thing. You can argue a lot and then come down and sit, and you at least have common ground in what you are talking about, what can be thrown aside right away that people don't like or refute. And that's not really something that happens at Old Eastwind.
Does Selena have a candle for you?
Yeah, I have like hella candles.
What were some of your first work areas?
Yeah, I did a lot of ranch work, odds and ends for sure. God, what did I do? Yeah, I did a lot of goat herding, milking. I did tons of milking, like right away.
Goat milking?
Goat milking mostly, but a little cow milking. I would just ask people if they needed help, and I would help them on pretty much whatever. That I got in the habit of doing all sorts of things to where in the like middle, like after a few years, I was still working in like 15 areas a week. which just for reference is a lot. I mean, people are generally working within like 5 areas, or if that. So yeah, don't really remember.
What was your first managership?
My first managership was sanitation manager of the business. Yeah, I went in deep. Um, yeah, I was learning a lot about, and that must have been something I was doing at the beginning too. But I was learning a lot about the factory, and I was doing a lot of sanitation work because that's grunt work essentially, or at least there is a lot of grunt work involved. Um, and the manager, Mandar, quit. And they're really what I remember being at a meeting, and I'm maybe like a 2-year-old member there. I remember being at a small meeting with people, and they're looking around like, okay, who's gonna be it? And I was like, well, I guess I'll do it. I know a bunch of the tasks that need to be done. Um, and I was friends with Mandar, so I had that going. Like Mandar could teach me stuff, um, while yeah, so that I could do the job well. And that was my first managership, and I held on to that for like 4 or 5 years, 4 years, I think.
To hold a managership that long is quite a rarity at
Yeah,
Eastwind. What kept you in it?
I think once I started getting good at it, which was a few years in, that helped a lot because I felt good about being competent at a thing. At the beginning of my managership, my schedule was still just crazy. I would sometimes be up at 5 in the morning finishing a clean for a roast that would happen 2 hours later, just because I procrastinated so much, and because if I struggled to get all these tasks done, it was because I wasn't asking enough people, and I expected them to not want to. I just had to deal with my own antisocial tendencies in that regard. But anyway, over the years, 5 o'clock in the morning became 2 o'clock, became 9 o'clock at night, became after a few years, I wanted to be done by dinner time on a Sunday. And I'm referring to like a very specific event, which is the weekend clean, which is a big part of the sanitation manager's job. But I also did get a lot better at the paperwork, and I worked with Sumner Eli Nichols III to 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 fabricate a lot of new documents and to make us FSMA compliant. And so I just felt good about being competent after a while. And then I do think I was stubborn. I think that, well, I know that beginning in the job, there were quite a few other managers in NutButters that were like, don't burn out. You're going to burn out. And I was just like, fuck that attitude. That's the worst. And it also was easy to be like that because they were pretty antisocial people themselves. Or like they had like clear problems that I did not have.
And they were burnt out.
Yeah, absolutely. They were, and they persisted. And I think that I don't know how I really was thinking about it back then, but I know now that if I'm done doing something, I feel it is my responsibility to hand that off. But I don't have any want to just hang on and be worse for the wear. I just don't do that. I don't think it doesn't make any sense to me. I will just stop. And if nobody's there to hand it off to, I'm sorry. Like, this is why you give people warning too, which I did when I eventually stopped being sanitation manager. I gave a lot of warning. So stubbornness also kept me going at first. And then I just enjoyed the job, actually.
Yeah, you trained a number of people for that position, and you would
Yeah.
say, I want to be done with this.
Yeah.
But it's kind of been in and out. Maybe the EWNutButters working in the factory is the only labor at Eastwind that is in some way required. Everyone who's a member pretty much needs to participate in the factory. So maybe talk about, and you being one of the managers, the communication in that very specific context. How what kind of advice would you give to someone who is training or working with, people that, you don't have the power to hire and fire and you're not paying them directly really? Maybe just talk about how did you motivate people? How did you work with people?
Yeah, I actually so it's been a real saga training new people to be sanitation managers. I'm doing it again, and that's great, but like now I only have a month and a half to do it, which isn't great because normally I just want to take my time. I'm not trying to rush. I'm not trying to train somebody 5 days a week. But anyway, she asked me basically this yesterday, and there's so many bits of advice. Like if you ask me for advice about the job and how to do it and how to live in community, we'll just talk hours and hours. God damn it. We'll talk for hours and hours. And the number one thing I can say with the fact that you can't hire and fire people and this work has to be done to provide money and resources for everything else. Well, first let me say that's just crazy making. It is. There's no clear cut solution for it. It takes a lot of work to overcome that. And that is indeed what it is. Because there's also a very popular sentiment of you can't tell me what to do, as popularized by Petey on the Route 60 documentary. I hate that he did that. Because it's good to follow people as well as lead. Like you need to take turns taking orders and giving them. Anyway, long story short, what I said to her was there will be many points at which you need to take a step back and separate what emotional labor you are doing and what is simply part of your job. And because those two things are often combined at Eastwind, people find themselves in situations where maybe you're trying to train somebody to do something. And her question to me was, what if they say, I just want to do it my way? My answer is, at that point, they're not letting you train them. There's some personality block, something happening right there. And now you are doing emotional labor by talking to them or asking them to trust you or whatever it is. But that's not the job. That's not something you hear somebody say if you can hire or fire them, like, oh, I'm just going to do it my way. So you need to be able to take a step back as often as possible and realize what is you doing your job and what is you relating to a person and talking to them on a personal level. And to accomplish that successfully, of course, you need other people in the picture. She or anybody else can't, or I can't do it by yourself. You will have certain people that you live in community with that you do not get along with. They piss you off for whatever reason. They remind you of somebody, whether you realize it or not. And it will become emotional labor to talk about something as simple as scrubbing an elevator chain. But if you realize that, I think you can really accomplish a lot. But I think people get caught up not realizing that and thinking like, man, I just want this thing to be done and I want to rely on this person, but they're unreliable. And and that's what I'm talking about. Relying on somebody who is unreliable is a classic part of living here. It is, you have to learn to deal with it. And there is not a solution for it. It is crazy making, and you can win sometimes. You can get through it, but it just sucks in general. I mean, it comes with the really great things about having so much autonomy here too.
Which skills learned at Eastman do you value the most?
I think the managerial skills, like the people skills that I have learned, I really value. I never had to really cooperate with people very much at all. I guess in school I had to a little bit, but I'm from the suburbs. If I wanted to just, I'm from the 21st century suburbs, I should say. If I wanted to just live inside on my computer, do my own thing, I could do that, and that's what I did before I lived here. So Eastwind has been a real crucible of people skills building, and I really value that. I've learned a little bit of so many things. I really value the gardening I did over the last year. That's all I did for like half a year for the growing season, essentially.
Yeah, maybe just talk about that. There's the addiction of alcoholism and stuff, but
Yeah.
did moving to Eastwind and living there help you tone down the gaming?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, so yeah, this is, part of what I was trying to get to about consuming too much. There are ways in which to be addicted to stuff, and Eastwind is a really bad place for you to be. But yeah, with my video game addiction and my addiction to computer activities, it helped immensely because there's a building on the north side of Eastwind proper, and that's the building where the Wi-Fi is, that's where the internet connection is, and that's where you have to go to do anything online. And I didn't have a computer. I actually gave that to Eastwind. So yeah, that really helped. I mean, nothing helps as much as giant barriers, like physical, real barriers in the way of you and your addiction. So I'd have to go to the specific place to do that thing, and usually it would be bright and beautiful outside, so kind of disincentivized me in a big way. And I mean, I play video games. I'm definitely in, like, I still do that, and sometimes I do it more than I want to, but it's nothing close to what I was doing before. I was playing the kind of game that can totally replace your life, where you don't have to stop playing the game. There's other people online all day. And at its worst, I was playing 20 hours a day of it because I had ADHD medication that's amphetamines. So I didn't really have to stop, and I didn't for months. So living at Eastwind helps a ton.
When are you planning on leaving next month? March?
March, yeah.
Why are you leaving?
Why am I leaving? Jesus Christ, that's such a big question. At the time when I decided to leave, which was like 6 months ago now, it boiled down to three things. One is that I was done with the drinking culture and like the party culture. So it's more than just drinking. Two was because the business leadership was and is so bad. There is this business that you and a few other people had like really made into something really, really awesome. And it was just being mishandled, neglected. I mean, there are still right now many documents related to the business or practices surrounding the business that are completely unknown or again neglected, which is just crazy because we've had the management that we've had for almost 2 years now, but it's just not getting better. I guess it's getting a little better, but it's just been awful. So that's the second reason. And the third reason was because, and this isn't exactly a fair statement, and I don't care. But basically, there are two people that had really respected opinions, or like no matter what it was, they guide the community to an extent, and they're like newer people, and I just couldn't abide that because these are two people that represent things that I just don't abide. So, it's kind of weird to say that, like I'm leaving because two people's opinions have so much sway, but it was more symbolic of a thing. If it's seriously happening here that these two people are held in high esteem, that just makes no sense to me. That's just a symbol of like why I can't live here, why I don't fit in.
Where do you see the direction going?
Well, I see directionlessness, basically. I see people using the abundant resources that Eastwind has. We've built up a bit of a savings account. I see that being depleted, and I don't really see much, future vision. At least nothing that I respect. Of course, saying that, that's like a real generality, and there's so many people and they're very individual. So there's a lot of things happening too in other directions that do not fit what I just said. And that's always going to be the case. It's just too complicated. There's too much going on at Eastwind for any generalization to stick that firmly. But for instance, the garden is being downsized again, and it's just like, it's so sad because we have this. And the ranch, isn't downsized per se, but we call in an ex member to inseminate cows, to do some of that work. There's an associate member, meaning somebody who's not living here around the year, who does a lot of the managing of the pastures. So we have like members that are less closely affiliated than full members that are actively here all the time, doing a lot of this agricultural work. And that's just one of the ways in which I see us just squandering resources because of the excesses of the past, or because of the successes of the past, and not building more of that.
What do you appreciate most about living at Eastwind?
I'll just go with the first thing that comes to mind. I am so grateful for how one's effort goes a really long way here. There's an economy of scale here. If I build something and I build it sturdy, I mean, it gets use from 70 people all the time. Like that kind of stuff, it's pretty amazing. And to that same extent, I'm laughing because I feel like I'm getting lazier, because you really don't have to work that hard when you live in a group of this size. It's a weird mismatch, because I think we're all taught and told over and over and over again throughout our lives, like, to work harder, that the effort you put in for fiscal reasons or for like subsistence reasons are like paramount. While that's true to an extent, it seems like it never ends, but like you really can only work 5 hours a day here, and it's like, and half of that work for me can be taking care of Angelo in the morning. That's a baby. And that's fine. Like, everything keeps moving and life is great. Like, we have a good life.
What do you like least?
I did talk about this a little bit, but what I like the least isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's that we have so much. We have so many options. There are so many areas in which to work. I think that leads to people being spread thin. It leads to people being very able to say, I don't want to do this thing. Maybe it's a really important function like growing food or working in the business. They can just say, I want to do my pet project, because we have all these resources. We have so much. Because we have so much, I think that people are spread thin and they take things a little more for granted. Yeah, so actually I don't like that. I think it distracts people as well. But again, that's not a bad thing.
What is a bad thing that really gets to you?
Okay. Oh, I see. This is the juice you need for your juicy documentary expose. The party culture, and I don't know if this is directly like the same thing, but the lack of future vision, the lack of long-term thinking, at least those things are certainly related. Like, people want to have a good time now at the cost of stability or whatever later. Personally, that's not what I'm into. That I can see how that worked for me when I first came here, because I was 20, but now I'm 27. I've always wanted to have children, or, and I've been thinking about that too, kind of differently, but I've always wanted to help and teach and be taught, which I suppose these are family values. I don't know. But that's not really happening very much. There are precious few children at Eastwind. Eastwind is more akin to a college than to a family. So that's something I don't like.
How do you define egalitarianism, and what is your opinion of Eastwind as an egalitarian community?
Yeah, I've come to really not use that word almost ever. So whatever my definition of it is, it doesn't barely matter, because you won't hear me use that word.
Egalitarianism is often described kind of in relation to the labor system there, as well as 1 hour of labor being 1 hour of labor, no matter what type or quality of labor it is, really. What is your opinion of the labor system there?
I always describe it as good enough. So it's an honor-based system where you trust that somebody is accounting for their own labor accurately and truthfully. And generally speaking, you need to work 35 hours a week each week. Usually once a month, you get 8 hours taken off of that. People will lie. They will be inaccurate. For those that are kind of workaholics, they can gain many hours above the standard set, and they can bank those and do nothing for long periods of time. I think that there are little issues all over with it, but like, I don't think it's that bad. I think it works well enough for a group of people that does not know each other that well. Like, I can see other systems working. I can see myself preferring other ways of doing things if I knew people better. Like, I would prefer to be goal-oriented and not like time spent oriented, because with the tracking of time, those that are really efficient and prize efficiency are really disincentivized. For myself, for example, that's clearly one of the ways in which I don't fit in anymore. Is like, if I were to fit in, I would just slow down a little bit more and work less efficiently and just be chill with that. Because I've worked side by side with people that just take their sweet ass time. And that's fine, but I just don't fit it. Like, I just want to get a thing done and be out. And sometimes that can seem like it can be a lot within our labor system. It can be kind of a headache to do that. Yeah, but it's good enough.
What are you looking forward to most going back outside?
The simplicity of it will be nice. I'm pretty sure I know what to expect with that. Like, I've lived here for almost 7 years. I have left generally once a year for a month or two. And usually when I leave, I'm going out east and I'm working as a handyman. I'm also hanging out with my family and some friends I have out there. So based on that, I know to expect of a construction job that I will begin working and I will focus on whatever tasks I need to accomplish, and I will accomplish them, and I will go home and I will get up and I do that same thing. I am actually very much looking forward to that for a while. I want more simplicity in my life. Like I said, I don't like that there's so many options. It's very distracting. I have my personal practices, which take up, a significant amount of my life, and those I can do wherever. But otherwise, I just want to learn how to build things better. That is my goal, as far as I can see it in the future. Is I am building buildings for my friends. I'm building houses. I'm repairing things. I'm renovating them, whatever. So I'm really looking forward to just focusing on that and getting really good at that.
That's a good stopping point. We got fucking 5 minutes in.
I'll be back in 20 minutes.
Up with this vociferous photography.
No.
How are you gonna do it? No, I use that word wrong?
Yeah.
I keep using that word wrong. I keep thinking it.
I mean, you could try to make that stretch.
Oh, God, Fran.
Yeah, it's safe down here, dude. I think. You're losing your sticks. Oh, those are your tapping sticks?
Those are my drumsticks.
Warren, when did you become a stunt driver, actor?
As soon as I came to Eastwind Community.
You followed your dreams, didn't you, brother?
I did, brother!
You got everything you needed! I really wanted you to fall off the truck right there.
That was happened. That was happened for real.